Hello, Tadeo.
Nania.
We have lots of interesting questions from our viewers.
All right, please proceed.
Well, our number one question was, the mirror on the James Webb Space Telescope looks like the crystal image that is displayed behind the channel when he does live events. Is that a coincidence, or is it just a geometric symbol used throughout the universe for practical reasons?
Well, there are no coincidences in the accidental meaning of the word. But the idea is simple geometry. It's easy to stack things together by using the hexagonal patterns. Now, the idea of the contact crystal is not completely only using hexagonal figures, at least not equilateral ones. So the idea is that it is slightly different, although it might be similar to the central portion of the contact crystal, but stacking things together in the same way that bees create hexagonal honeycombs and the way that different kinds of atomic structures stack together in hexagonal patterns is something that is simply a practical application of allowing things to be as close as they possibly can be and yet still fulfill their function, giving enough surface area to act as the collector for the light that the telescope needs to receive.
Okay, thank you. What is the energetic difference between the eye of the needle phase and the window of open contact phase? Will things start to feel lighter and less intense, or should we expect the deep processing work to continue for quite some time?
Processing will always continue, but the nature of the process will change. The idea of the eye of the needle energy is more an energy of letting go of those things that hold you back, whereas the open contact energy will be a reflection of all the things you have let go of so that things can seem easier, but that doesn't mean processing will end. It simply means that the process will change, the subject matter will change, you will come to face different issues than you have been facing during the eye of the needle process. So it's a matter of not so much a lessening of intensity, but a smoother flow through the intensity so it might be perceived as something easier, even though the level of energy might actually be greater.
Oh. What percentage of the audience today would be capable of interacting with one of the hybrid races directly?
About 27%, depending on the hybrid.
And can you tell us more about dark energy and dark matter, and that are such mysteries to our astrophysicists?
All right, it's a big subject. We will attempt to be brief. Again, number one, we have explained that if you look at this as a structure of two overlapping spirals going in opposite directions, you see that the spirals get greater and greater as they go out. The crossing points are farther and farther apart. Yet the idea of the universe expanding and accelerating in its expansion is the product of those wider and wider crossing points of the two spirals, and yet at the same time, the idea of the expansion of space-time having infinite speed. So you're crossing bigger distances in the same amount of time that you're crossing the smaller ones, which translates into your reality as acceleration. So this is a structural explanation. But for a different explanation of the idea of the difference between dark energy and dark matter, we have a way of expressing it in your language, though it may not immediately make complete sense to you. But we will nevertheless give you a way in which it can be framed. You can look at the idea of dark matter as a photonic electron, and the idea of dark energy as an electronic photon. We know this may not make much sense to you in your language as you understand these things physically now, but that is the only way that we can find in your language to express the difference between the two, and simply express the idea that there are different states of matter, different states of electrons that function more like light, more like photons, and different states of photons that function more like matter, more like electrons. And this is the difference between the idea of dark matter and dark energy.
Okay, thank you. Of the civilizations who consume food, ET civilizations, are you aware of any that are culturally focused on the pleasure of food and are considered intergalactically for their cuisine?
There are several civilizations that do gain pleasure from the eating of food. This is not an uncommon thing. And there are several civilizations that do ingest food that are interstellar and do prize certain dishes that exist, certain cuisine that exists on other planets, if it is compatible vibrationally with them. So yes, those things do exist.
Do the hybrid children eat like we do?
Many of them do. Mostly they have a vegetarian diet or a liquid diet of vegetable and fruit juices. But yes, many of them still consume substance in that way, though it tends to be lighter.
Once they get here, will they feel drawn to try other things here?
Depending on what they have chosen, a few of them may be more experimental than others, but for the vast majority of them, they will maintain their relatively light vegetarian diet.
Because can their physiology handle what we eat here as well as all the toxins that are here?
Again, for the most part, no. But there will be a few who may have chosen to be a little bit more vibrationally experimental, and therefore they will be able to go a little bit further in the trying of different substances.
What about us? Do we ultimately need to become vegan in order to be at a higher frequency?
It's not that you need to, but it's that most of you will, simply because as you raise your frequency, you would simply naturally lose the urge to eat more denser substances.
So you see that happening very soon in the future, because we're talking about contact with these children. By that time, would you have to be vegan to have contact with them?
No, not necessarily. It depends upon the person and what they need for themselves to achieve a certain vibrational level that makes them more vibrationally compatible. But no, not necessarily. There may be some that are still ingesting slightly denser substances that will actually still be capable of raising their frequency to the point where they can interact freely with some of the hybrid children. Although again, it may be certain hybrid children that will be capable of matching those vibrations more easily. But again, you will attract what you need.
Okay. And your civilization seems pretty unified in terms of your understanding of how the mechanics of reality work and very clear on things like life and death,
Yes.
metaphysics, etc. So whereas humans seem very divided about it and confused, and as we evolve, will we all come to some sort of clear understanding of these ideas?
If you evolve, yes. If you don't, no.
To what degree, when you say evolve, like obviously we're not going to be at the same frequency level you are, but what kind of frequency level would be required here to have a clearer understanding?
At least frequencies that stay within the 200,000 vibrational range. 200,000 vibrations, 200,000 frequency and above. You don't have to be at 300,000, but somewhere in the 200,000s will be sufficient for you to be able to experience many of the understandings that we experience.
And is that same frequency range appropriate for interacting with children or other ETs that are of higher frequency that are coming here?
Some, yes. Not all, but some.
Okay. One of your biggest lessons is following your highest excitement. And do you have to teach this idea to other cultures too, or is it just that it's specific to our, relevant to our Earth experience here?
There are different levels of understanding in the different civilizations we have made first contact with, and some of them do require an understanding in the way we have presented it to you. Not all of them, and maybe not all partially, understand things or fully understand things. There are differences within every civilization, and of course how it's expressed will be different according to how they receive information more efficiently. But yes, there are civilizations in which we've had to explain these things similar to the way we've explained them to you.
Yeah, because it's so much our natural inclination to do what's exciting to us. So it's already built into us. It's just recognizing the validity and the importance of what that represents.
Yes, it's about bringing you back to your natural state instead of allowing you to remain in what you might refer to as a normal state, which is something that you've been educated to perpetuate, rather than simply allowing yourself to be more natural, in which you would automatically understand these things because in your natural state, your vibration is much higher. Remember that this whole process is allowing you to remember who you are and to remember how to be who you truly are. It's not about teaching you something, shall we say, that you don't know, but it's about helping you understand how to let go of those things that prevent you from truly knowing your true state, your true being.
Like often on this planet, people will have an epiphany where they let go of a lot of beliefs just instantaneously for a brief period of time and experience themselves without questioning their value, or that go hand in hand with that higher frequency state that you stop worrying about whether or not you're worthy or you.
Yes, that is a result of being in a high frequency state. For one reason or another, however you got there spontaneously at that moment, for whatever purpose it serves in your life to be there for that moment, yes, anytime you're in that high state, all of those things that prevent you from knowing yourself disappear because they're not relevant for that state. They're not even capable of being perceived in that state. But at least going into that state, even temporarily, allows you to know that such states do exist and that they are possible for you. And it gives you the incentive to move forward, to let go of those things that prevent you from being in that state more often or even constantly.
So ultimately, is that what it comes down to, is really truly loving and valuing yourself enough so that you can be in a high frequency state?
Yes, and of course, when you love yourself that way unconditionally, you automatically experience the connection to everything else too. And therefore, yes, you know yourself.
So in our society, a lot of people experience competition and feeling like they're not socially as good as somebody else.
Yes. Well, as we have said, you have no business comparing yourself to anyone else because each and every one of you is unique.
So it really means choosing a different way of perceiving yourself than what's demonstrated for you as typical in society of how we look at ourselves.
Yes, of course.
The Shalanaya, there's been a little bit of confusion. It says, you said that the Shalanaya mean those who come first, and used it seemingly as broader term in earlier transmission to describe the Yael. But Shalanaya is now being used more specifically to describe the name of the hybrid children. Can you explain?
Well, again, remember, we have said that the Yael will be the first hybrid race that you would make open contact with. So in that sense, they come first, as the hybrid races are concerned. But also, they're the ones bringing the hybrid children. So we specifically now, when you understand that the Yael are the first hybrid race you will interact with on a larger scale, can differentiate between the children who will come to live among you as well. So in that sense, both of them are those who come first, but they come in different ways for different reasons.
And you said that the multiverse is half positive, half negative, and then there's a very fine line of neutrality in between, or that's the third state.
Yes, because then it can't be half and half. It has to be, as we said, 49 and 51%.
Right. So how is it possible that you and your race only experience the positive side of things?
Because that's what we choose to experience. It doesn't mean that the negative side isn't there to be chosen. We just know that it's not what we prefer. We don't invalidate it. We don't dismiss it. We don't become unaware of it. In fact, we become more aware of it as our consciousness expands, but we simply don't choose it.
So when you share information with us about what happened to the Greys and how we seem to be going down the same trajectory,
Yes.
are there multiple ways that we can choose an Earth that doesn't have that experience? And does it always tie into ET contact?
No. You don't absolutely have to have contact with extraterrestrials to experience, as you say, heaven on earth. We're not an absolute necessity for you to experience a higher frequency. It's just that very often when you experience a higher frequency, as I said, you automatically start realizing that you are connected to many other things besides your own world. And therefore, it's a logical extension of a higher frequency. But no, it's not an absolute necessity that you have to have extraterrestrial contact to have an absolutely positive experience as a society on your planet. There are many parallel realities where that's true. There is no ET contact, and yet Earth is a sublime, beautiful, peaceful place.
And does it have to do with, when you say higher frequency states, doesn't what come hand in hand with that, isn't that extra dimensionals, let's say, that you have contact with other levels of reality, other dimensions of reality, dead people, all of that?
Yes.
Like, isn't that part of the evolution?
It can be. It doesn't have to be. There are any number of probabilities, any number of pathways. So you can become aware of those things, and you can actually still choose not to interact with them for a variety of reasons that are not necessarily negative. Remember, as we have said, even when you clear yourself of what might be typically termed fear-based or negative beliefs, there can still be a clearing of what you have deemed as simply not relevant for you. Something doesn't have to be negative to simply be not relevant for you. So there may be civilizations who have the perfect realization that there are extra dimensionals, that there are spirits, that there are extraterrestrials, but they simply realize that for the path they have chosen, it's simply not necessary for them to really open up an interaction with any of those beings. So I'm not necessarily saying that we have found that's common, but the idea is it's certainly probable.
So there's all different ways of dealing with our spirit level.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.